So just a bit of a landscape here. As the market progresses through different stages, there's different factors to consider. First one here, if we slide over to the slump phase, which is likely what we're in right now, we do see property prices are down. New construction is on a relative high as developers do need to continue releasing product. Rental rates have not continued going up. They've actually plateaued from September, as we've seen. So we're not really seeing a raise in rental rates. But the two factors we want to focus on here, especially in a recession, are the vacancy rates and the property inventory. We haven't quite, as Steve was alluding to, we haven't quite seen the property inventory go up due to the factors that he's mentioned. But if we do see a recession come in and jobs are kind of being lost, layoffs are coming into effect, property inventory is directly correlated with that as well. So we could see this uptick, as he was mentioning, in addition to vacancy rates. So just want to focus on those two pieces to go to the next slide here. So considering the vacancy rates and the risk that comes in with that, we really want to go back to basics here when buying. So location is super key. You hear the cliche all the time, location, 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 but I mean, it's true. We're looking at things that won't really go away in a recession. And those industries are hospitals and healthcare, our education sector with universities. A great kind of pivot would be student housing. Interestingly, if you think about it, as a recession happens, people get laid off. A lot of individuals might decide to go back to school and do their studying. So going to perhaps whether it's a formal student housing arrangement, or maybe it's a condominium near university, those are super important, and you're going to have lower vacancy rates in these industries here. Business centers and any urban center where someone is working is going to be quite important. You just want a place where people, worst case scenario, they want to be close to work. They don't want to drive, less gas money. You got to think in terms of location, where they want to live, which is often where they work. So these are quite important to consider. Middle of the road properties are great as well. Certain cities, such as maybe the Tri-Cities and New West, these are very central to a lot of different areas. They're not quite high end in terms of price point. What I want to mention too, in the stats we're looking at last month in February 2023, 79% of listings that sold last month were under $1.5 million. So as Steve says, with that downward compression of demand, people are having to buy down, buy cheaper. And we even see multiple offers with families wanting to cram like 4 or 5 people in a 2-bed condo, or rental. It's such a demand for rental that people are making it work. So what we're seeing is a downward compression. So you kind of want to get those middle of the road properties. There's always going to be demand for a 1 or 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom condo. It's very hard to kind of take away that demand. Next year, we have strong, robust cash flow. Just to fight against rising interest rates if they do go up more, hopefully not. But if they do, you want to make sure you have a strong cash flow source. Just like a business, you want to have that cash flow protect you and pay off those payments. And finally, transit-oriented developments, kind of to the first point, somewhere that people can take the train to work. If they don't want to drive or want to sell their car, hey, I'll take the train to work. This is always a great kind of factors to consider when buying. Move on to the next one here. We recommend staying away. With recessions, often what gets hit hard is recreational properties. This could just because discretionary spending, if people don't have as much cash to buy what they want. So in terms of extracurricular properties, so you want to avoid recreational stuff. Single industry towns are also a bit of a risk. If the one mill in town gets shut down and those jobs are lost, you're going to have a lot of vacancy hitting that town, and it's going to be hard to get it re-rented. Luxury product, again to the last slide, it is tougher to resell in a recession, and you might see a bigger decline in this space here. And finally, anything speculative, you want to avoid that as well. So if you don't have a clear exit strategy when acquiring a property, such as maybe vacant land, it's probably not the best idea to buy unless you have cash and you don't care about interest payments. You want to buy something with some cash flow that can service that debt, and you want to know how you can basically pivot with that property and make sure that you get your cash flow, or you can sell it off at a profit, or at least make sure you're not going to lose money on it. Next slide here. Some strategies for 2023. It's the good old buy and hold. I mean, you hear realtors say it all the time. There's never a bad time to buy, and if you're buying with a long-term outlook, You're really, it's Vancouver. We have 400,000 people coming to Canada, 100,000 to BC, 60,000 to the Lower Mainland. You're going to do well in the long term, just because there's a lot of great fundamentals with Vancouver that's made it a place people want to move to for the last 30 years and for the next 30 years to continue. If you're looking at something 3 years plus, or even 5 years plus, we like 5 years are probably a better window, but at least 3 years is a very minimum. You'll do okay. Foreclosures, we haven't seen this too much just yet, but if people do lose jobs, unfortunately, that might be something that might happen where in these cases here, you might look at some foreclosures to basically purchase a property, and that could be an option down the road here. Pre-sales, you're seeing a lot of developers right now offering some really great incentives. This could be a lower deposit, perhaps a 10% deposit structure. Some developers are offering $50,000 off, $100,000 decorating credits. So you want basically to get something where you can pre-negotiate a great deal where you're building in that cushion. And what I like to say again is that long-term outlook, because you don't really want something completing next year in a sense, because if the economy is in a worse off place, that is not really a great option to be completing in that environment. Ideally, if you want to get something just as far out as possible, that would really kind of hedge that risk, because again, fundamentals are there that we could argue that Vancouver is going to be a growing market in the long term. The last point here is, again, very quickly, this is not really one that is probably more in the commercial space, but you're starting to see vendor take back mortgages, which is basically a seller saying, hey, the buyer saying, hey, I can't get a mortgage right now, but I see the value in your property. I need a few months to kind of renovate it, to turn it around. Can you, as the seller, give me the mortgage? Seller will give a temporary mortgage while you fix it up, and you go back to the bank later, which ideally when rates come down at some point here, you can take it to an institutional lender. But that's probably more of a kind of commercial play. So I won't spend too much time on that. Next slide. So best practices buying and selling. With selling, you want to make sure your property stands out. There's about 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 properties are selling. You want to make sure you're in that group. So that means really taking the time to stage it, make it look nice, declutter your property if you're selling, take the professional photos, fix little gimmicks that are not working, because these are the things that as inventory grows, you want to make sure your property stands out of the bunch. In general, properties that are not kept or have fixer uppers, these are not the properties that actually you get a bit more discount. You're going to get hit harder in an environment with more inventory if your property is not kind of a 10 out of 10. As Steve was mentioning, we're seeing multiple offers. If the property is priced well and it looks good, you're getting 3, 4, 5, 6 offers still. So you want to make sure you're that property, which means pricing it well and making sure you take care of the small stuff. Buying a property, so switch over to the other side here, you don't really want to necessarily leverage to the max right now. If you can potentially put a 40 to 60% down payment with cash and get a 40% mortgage, that is much better, because again, if rates continue to go up a little bit more, which there is a risk of that, you don't really want to get caught in that kind of crunch there. And when buying right now, as inventory grows, it's almost not that you want to buy anything. You almost want to buy something where you don't want to buy something you're going to regret, essentially. So that means taking the time where you're doing your proper inspections and due diligence, even though it might look like a great deal, really take the time to go through those kind of due diligence and going through the documents, making sure you're buying what you actually think you're buying. Don't be afraid to renegotiate. So, last week here at a client, we did an inspection. There was some stuff that need attention in terms of the roof for the next couple of years, hot water tank, fairly simple stuff. And we threw on the table, we say, hey, we want $10,000 off to remove subjects tomorrow. 6-7 months ago, they would have laughed at you if you said that, because it's kind of take it or leave it. But sellers in this case said, sure, we'll sign off on it if you can remove subjects, and no questions asked, they did it. So I'd say don't be afraid to renegotiate. If you do see something that is making you a little uncomfortable, it's just definitely the market and climate to do that. And finally here, we're looking at stink bids. A bit of work for your realtor, but this is definitely a strategy that would work well, is just put in the offer. A lot of clients want to time the market perfectly and they want to buy right at the bottom, but unfortunately, no one knows what that bottom is. So what you can do as a buyer is to really build that cushion in and offer maybe 5-10% under market value, build that cushion in. So if the market does decrease further, you've already got that secured.